Hi, welcome to another edition of InSecurITy.TV. I am your host, Charles Henson in Nashville, Tennessee. Along with us today, we have Scott Beck up in Canada and David Ruddock all the way on the other side of down under Australia. So today, we're going to be talking about ring, ring, who's there? Have you gotten a phone call where the phone rings, you have no idea who it is, but you think, I better answer this. So you pick up the phone, you answer it, and there's nothing there but silence on the other end. Or maybe you hear a beeping sound. Or maybe there is somebody there on the other end, and they're asking you questions about your business, or if they can speak to somebody that's in charge of certain departments within your companies. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how computer automated programs are making phone calls to know whether or not you are a live person on the other end of the phone. And then they're building these lists out, and they're using these for various scams. Scott, David, we talked about this offline, and, we'll start with David. He got a phone call from someone asking about information. And David, can you share with us a little bit more about what happened in that situation?
Sure. So one of my staff got a call from a guy who claimed to be from the NBN. So for the viewers who don't know what the NBN is in Australia, the NBN is the government's proposed national broadband network, which is a goal to bring high-speed internet to every home and business in Australia. We'll see that sometime in 2050. Anyway, I took the call, immediately recognizing that it sounded pretty scammy to me. And the guy said to me, look, the NBN's coming to your street soon, and to prepare you, we just need to know how many telephone lines you have. And I said, sorry, where are you calling from? He said, oh, we're calling from the NBN. I said, no, where are you really calling from? And I forget the name of the actual place that he was calling from, but it was a marketing company. I said, listen, take us off your list. Thank you very much, and hung up. What they're doing in that call sequence is they're not part of the NBN. They're a marketing company, and they're doing what we in the business industry call cleaning and qualifying a list. And what they were doing is trying to gather information about my business to ascertain how many lines I have, so that their client, who will be some other third party, can potentially sell, telephone services to me down the track. If I have a 20 or 30 number telephone line system here, then I'm a really good candidate to them. The reality is we have 2 telephone lines and everything else goes over VoIP, so there's not a huge sales pitch to us. But this happens all the time, and it's if you're not careful in what you're thinking, staff very quickly give over details because it's just a social engineering trick.
Yeah, they're trying to build their list so that they know exactly how much information you have. And, in that case scenario, you have somebody that's actually answering the call. But, I get a phone call from time to time, and I'll listen, and there'll be nothing but silence. So I say, hello, nothing but silence. I hang up the phone, go about my business. Another week passes by, I get another anonymous call. And, what they're doing is they're actually building a list of people that are live answering these calls. I think back to when we used to get email, and you would reply back to the email saying, unsubscribe me. And the people that you would send the email to unsubscribe would actually say, oh, okay, that's a legitimate person. And then they would take your email address and build out a known good email list, and then they would sell that list. They're doing the same thing with phone numbers. So they're using automated systems to dial thousands and thousands of phones to see if there's a human on the other end. If you cough, if you say hello, if you just answer the phone, then they know whether or not it's a live answer versus a busy signal, a failed call, or maybe an answer machine that picks up. And, Scott, you talked about this on a previous call where somebody called claiming to be Microsoft, wanting to clean off your computer, for one of your clients. And that's how they're building these lists. Have you run into that in Canada at all?
Oh, it's an ongoing basis with Microsoft calling in to say that there's stuff on your computer. Now they seem to be getting smarter, and in our little area here in Canada, they're starting to say they're from other places as well, because the word is starting to get out, and the Microsoft angle seems to be getting burned a little bit for them. But they're trying other ways to do this. Yes, as you said, Charles, as people are calling and validating their list, it makes those numbers more valuable so that these scam companies or even legitimate retailers, for example, would pay money to get these telephone numbers to know that they're live and to be able to target you and to use those numbers. I'll tell you my personal Microsoft, again, I'm going to have to air quote Microsoft story, was they actually called my residence at it's like 6:15 in the morning. And they were upset that I pointed out to them that they called that early in the morning. And it led to a nice lively discussion, shall we say, for about 45 seconds. But this is how they're going about doing that, to try to figure out who's a good spot to be. And although we haven't seen it in our neck of the woods, there have been a report from the RCMP here in Canada that at one time people were targeting certain areas for robberies, for not home evasions, but break-ins, by calling numbers, and they're building over time. When are people home and when aren't they home? So they know when that window of opportunity is most likely for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So really what you need to think about and what people need to be thinking of and be mindful of is think before you post your phone number. So if you're going to set up your own personal website or personal blog, don't put your phone number on it. If you're going to post something on Craigslist, don't put your phone number on it. There's an option in there for them to send you an email. So even with that, you can set up a bogus email account or one that you don't use as your primary email, just in case that information ever got stolen. Because they say a lot of these numbers that are in these databases came from places such as Target, Home Depot, from those breaches. So if you put your actual numbers in there, then that information is going to be out there for people to use. So the less places that you put your number, the better. Now, one of the things that we need to talk about is anytime that you're looking at putting your number on like a Craigslist ad. Scott brought up the fact that they're looking for certain types of things. There were a lot of burglaries based on Craigslist ads. Somebody had a 60-inch TV for sale, and they posted on Craigslist. They put the phone number on there. The thieves called and said, hey, I want to come over and look at that TV. And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to be home, because we're going to Christmas recital, blah, 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 whatever. And the crooks were like, oh, okay, well, what part of town do you live in? So, maybe we can meet up tomorrow. And then while the homeowner was away, they actually came in and broke in and took the TV. So there's all kinds of different scams out there to be wary of. And you need to just make sure that you're not putting your phone number out there. Now, one of the things that I was reading about, it says, there's not really much you can do other than not answer your phone or simply hang up. Scott, David, you guys got any other tips on this of how to keep yourself safe and how to keep your number safe?
Yeah, I was just going to say with the Craigslist thing, one of the other aspects people probably need to remember is that when you take a photo with your camera, your DSLR, your phone, etc., the default setting is to install geotagging, which is the GPS location, time and date of when that photo was taken. Now, if you've just gone and taken a photo of your beautiful TV that you're selling on Craigslist or whatever online place, it's got your address tagged in it. So if you tell people you're going to be away from that address, you've just opened the door. The other thing, have your home number private. There's really very little reason to have a home telephone these days. And put yourself on a do not call list.
Scott?
Well, the do not call list here in Canada was a failed attempt of a do not call list. So in Canada, we don't recommend that because it actually ended up getting leaked out and got handed out to the people that was supposed to protect from. That being said, realistically, if you have a telephone at home, the phone's going to ring. You're going to answer. So there's really not a whole lot you can do other than hang up quickly, not talk. And Charles makes a great point. Don't publish it out online because it can be gathered. you hear often, don't hand out your street address. We're teaching our kids, don't just tell people where they live, where they're at. It holds true when you're an adult too.
Yep. And if you should get one of these phone calls and they do happen to start calling you more frequently, be aware that if they're starting to ask you information, say for instance, you get a call and they say, hey, this is so-and-so, it's an automated call. And let's say that they're calling and saying, hey, if you're the card holder, please press 1. Otherwise, have the card holder call this 800 number. Be cautious of that. If you think there's a problem with your credit card or your bank card or whatever, look at the phone number on the back of that or look at the phone number on their website and call that number. Don't call the number that was left as an automated system. Most of these companies are not going to call you like that. They're going to send you notifications, whether it's via email or text messages or whatever. It's rare that they would call you. But if they do call you, it's not going to be an automated system where you're going to press 1 or 2. Thinking most likely it's going to be something where you're going to talk to a real live person to make sure that they are legit. And like I said, call them. Don't let them call you.
And Charles, when you have someone like that on the phone and you're thinking it sounds really good, ask them for their first name or their badge number, their employee number. Ask them what telephone number that you can call them back at to initiate the call. And then go check, as you said, the website. And if the numbers aren't matching, chances are it's not legit.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually had a really good example of this the other day. I've got an insurance claim on for my house at the moment, and the insurance company called and the lady started going through the whole, we need you to verify your thing. And I said, look, I'm really sorry to do this to you. I'm not trying to be a pain in the neck, but I try and educate people not to just start giving their details forward when someone calls them. So can I call you back? And can I reach you via the main number for this insurance company? And she said, look, you won't get back to me, but yes, call, quote the reference number, and you'll speak to someone. Now, I called through, spoke to someone different, and they said, look, why don't we put a special password on this particular file so that when we call you in future, we will tell you the password that you've left on this record. So I believe it's only valid for this particular claim that I'm going through, but it would actually allow them to validate it themselves. And I said, that's brilliant. That makes it so much easier for me to deal with you, because I hate having to do this, but there's so many scammers out there. And they were completely fine with it. They're obviously very aware that this is out there, and they probably prefer that we are being cautious.
Yep. And David, I don't know if you remember or not, but you were here in Nashville with me at one of my clients, and he was telling all of his employees about American Express calling him. And somebody had set up a bank account through American Express. And so he said, well, verify who I am. And so they gave him his name. He said, well, give me my address. And they did. He said, well, give me my social security number. And they did. And he's like, well, how do you have all this information? Because you're not supposed to have that. So he hung up the phone. He called back, talked to American Express, and they said, oh, no, somebody has set up an account under your name with your credentials. But if you didn't authorize this, then we need to deactivate the account. They had every piece of information about him. And had he just went on with the call, there's no telling what other information they were using, and they would have found out about him. But he was able to go into tell the American Express rep that, hey, look, I don't want that account created. I don't want to use your checking account, money market, whatever it was, and go ahead and close that and don't allow it to be opened up on my account again. And just like David, he put restrictions on his account so that there's certain things that have to be done to open up certain types of accounts within American Express. So same thing, just like David said. So really good advice on that, David.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of some of the companies thinking a little bit outside the box, because the problem is it's those companies who previously conditioned us to accept that this is the normal practice. It's the social engineering. If we could put a password on the account or some sort of thing that the company has to use to verify us, of course, there is still risk that could be breached and got out anyway, but there needs to be what we would call in the security industry, two-factor authentication. They need to be able to verify them with us.
Yep, absolutely. And Scott, maybe it was you and I talked about this about malware being on a phone and being able to redirect phone numbers being dialed into customer service. So I would say always use a landline or a phone, maybe your office phone or something, not just your cell phone. Was that you, Scott?
It was, yeah. With people with different malware, if you've ever jailbroken your phone, they can put what's called, for lack of a better term, rootkit in there. And what it does is actually watching every number you're dialing from your phone, and it knows what the important bank numbers are. And if any of those numbers actually come up and get dialed, it knows that instead of it sending it to the call center, it's now sent to Cindy in India or Ukraine. They've just routed the call, and you think you've dialed your bank, but you're actually talking to some scammer in another country. That has been known to happen. There's been documented cases. So I agree with you. Try to use the landline where possible.
Yeah. So I think the points of the call today, some tips for you are: don't just take calls from customer service. Ask to call them back. If the phone line rings and nobody's there after the first hello, hang up. If it's important, they'll call you back. If you do get somebody calling you and it sounds like they're fishing for information or trying to scam you, then hang up the phone. Move on about your day. And lastly, when you're going to call customer service, always call them from a landline, not your cell phone. So even if you need to wait until you're at work, maybe you take your lunch break, whatever, make those phone calls from there. And it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. Join us again for another edition of InSecurITy TV.